All right, Buffy.
Yes.
Buffy, where'd you grow up? Where are you from originally?
Middletown, Ohio.
Ohio. And tell me about your childhood. You had both your parents when you were young?
Grew up with both parents.
Good childhood?
Pretty all-American Midwest childhood.
Good.
Latchkey kid.
What kind of kid were you in high school?
Pretty popular. Cheerleader, track, swim team, skating.
And you graduated high school?
Yes.
And then what happened after that?
I went to college. I had a son when I was 17. I was a senior in college. Senior in high school. And everybody told me I wouldn't finish college because of that. And so I'm pretty stubborn and I finished college.
Good for you. That's great. And where'd your life go after college?
Well, I was a poli-sci major. I have a bachelor's degree in political science. I got accepted to law school, but I had done a summer internship at Capitol Records the year before I graduated, and they offered me a full-time position. It was the early 90s.
You moved to LA at some point? Or?
Well, I was out here on the summer internship just at Capitol.
Oh, I see.
Between my junior and senior year in college, and I was supposed to go to law school, but they offered me a full-time position here. So I brought my son and we moved out here, and I started at Capitol Records in 91, 2-ish. And about 6 to 12 months after I worked in the publicity department where we were hard pitching singles to the radio station still. And then Napster came and pretty much made my job, obsolete. When everything went digital. So I ended up going with an attorney that left Capitol. He started a private adoption attorney law firm, and I went to work with him and did private adoptions for like 10 years. Well, I modeled when I was young, and I started modeling around 12 years old. And I went to Barbizon and all that stuff, but I was with an agency out of Middletown, and he used to take groups of girls backstage to concerts. He always had cocaine and pretty girls with him, and pretty much got him in anywhere. And I think I went to my first backstage experience with Motley Crue and Ozzy, and I was like 15, I think. I partied with Motley Crue, pretty heavy. One of their roadies fell in love with me, and it was a whole thing. Well, for some reason, per capita, so to speak, Middletown, Ohio has the most beautiful women I've yet to see anywhere, altogether. And I had a '76 Chevy van that I used to pile about 10 girls in, and we could pull up at any concert anywhere and get in. We were.
So your first experience doing that
was actually with the modeling agency, but then after that I kind of just branched out on my own. I used to travel all over with bands. I went on tour with a couple bands with Iron Maiden. I toured with Metallica and Ozzy. That was before Cliff Burton died, so it was in the early days. They were opening for Ozzy. I was dating Vivian Campbell for a while. He was with Ronnie James Dio at that point before Def Leppard. I dated the drummer from the Outfield. I went all over the country and Canada, I guess.
And what does a 15-year-old girl backstage end up doing?
A lot of drugs, a lot of sex, a lot of just wild parties.
It's what everyone imagines.
It's just like everyone imagines.
Yeah. Interesting. And so back to LA, and so you worked for a law firm for 10 years.
Yes.
And
actively on drugs at that time too.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
So drugs came into your life around the Groupie stage?
Around 15 or so. Yeah.
And you stuck with it?
Harder drugs, late, after I came out here. I was roommates when I moved out here to work at Capitol with this one-hit wonder band called Jafria. I don't know if you
I remember them
or not. He was the drummer for them, and he played with Ike and Tina Turner, and developed a cocaine habit with them, with Ike Turner, and played with the Beach Boys, was on Ed Sullivan, all that. And he had, I mean, literally just about every famous rock star and TV actor you could think of that would buy drugs from him. And I moved in right, you know, into the middle of that. And that's when I started doing, you know, coke a lot.
Hmm.
So I was snorting cocaine then.
And so you raised your son
Yes.
the entire time?
He's 34 now.
He's 34. Wow.
And then I also have a daughter, Molly, that I got pregnant when I was here. She's 30. She just turned 30 in February. She's an international model. So.
Wow. You've had a colorful life.
Yeah. She actually she was married and had a baby with the CEO of the home loan department of JP Morgan. Like, this lady oversees like $2.9 trillion in accounts. She had a child with her only sibling, her little brother. So, you know, she's very wealthy from that. They're not together anymore, but.
And so today you're living where?
Today I'm living, well, I tell my dad a lot that I'm homeless because technically I don't have a place in my name. He says, "You're not homeless, you have a bedroom here with everything you own. You're never homeless." But they're in Ohio. But I stay at, a friend of mine has a house in Torrance that I raised his daughter with him. She's 18. Her mom died when she was 6 months old from a drug overdose. And so I'm pretty much like the only mom she knows. He's a pretty antisocial guy, so there's not a lot of people in her life. So I try to stay close to her. But he has an obsession with me that's not healthy. And so sometimes I stay in my car and I, you know, park behind my brother's job over here so that I'm safe.
So at least when you're in LA, you're homeless.
Recently, yeah. I have a very recent ex-boyfriend that I'm 51 and he's 27, so, and he's very abusive, so I've been going through a lot of drama with that, you know.
And what is your drug today?
I use meth, Xanax.
Yeah. And back in that was the 80s that you were?
This is the 90s.
The groupie thing?
The groupie thing started in the 80s, but the heavy drugs started in the 90s. Like,
what drugs were popular back in the 80s and 90s?
I mean, I was snorting cocaine and just about anything, you know.
So as a homeless woman today, you're supporting yourself how?
Well, I get disability, but that's only a little bit of money, but I shoplift a lot. So, you know, people tell me certain things that they want, and I boost them.
Yeah, and there's, what are they called? The people that buy from the boosters?
The fence.
The fences, yes.
Yeah. I decided very early out here in my drug addiction that I wasn't going to be a prostitute. I'm not promiscuous, and, you know, I'm very selective as far as that goes. So I had to come up with some kind of hustle. I've sold drugs, you know, brokered drugs between people, and I wouldn't call myself a drug dealer, but been the middleman type of thing. And
But you're surviving.
I'm surviving day to day. I have a little dog. Usually he would be with me, but he's not today.
What's been the lowest point of your life?
I would say, well, it wasn't just one event, but like the last 2 years. I had a 19-year-old daughter that was killed in a car accident 2 years ago.
Sorry.
And I lost both of my dogs that year too. And I met this guy, this abusive boyfriend at that time. And so it was kind of the perfect storm for him to just like move in. And he's really done a number on me, like emotionally and confident-wise and self-esteem and physically and, you know, all of that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So,
Abuse of any sort is...
Excuse me?
Abuse of any sort has got to be terrible to go through.
Yeah, it's really bad.
What was the best time of your life? This period?
I've had a lot of them.
It sounds like it. Yeah.
You know, I've had a lot of them. My childhood was really, really good. I had good people. I'm still friends with the same people that I've known my whole life. I'm Jewish, but I went to Catholic school for 12 years, and there was only 60 people in my homeroom. And I went to school with those 60 people for 12 years. So they're still in my life to this day, most of them. And, you know, I look back on those times, and they were good. I love the book To Kill a Mockingbird. It reminds me of my hometown.
Yeah.
So.
And your kids are doing well, right?
My kids are great, yeah.
And they know that you're living like this?
I don't know if my daughter really understands that I'm, you know, technically homeless. My son does more so, but she's fragile that way, you know, like it would hurt her, you know, even though she could fix it like that, but I would never ask. And so it's kind of like the big white elephant. I don't see her a lot. She travels all over the world with her daughter all the time, and you know, she lives like a Jay-Z and Beyonce life type of thing.
Can I ask you to share one of your groupie stories when you were younger?
So I'm just gonna tell you like how it came to be.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So Ozzy was coming. Ozzy and Metallica. Metallica was a fairly new band. They were opening for Ozzy. I was going to see Ozzy. I had a mad crush on Jakey Lee, their guitar player, and I was just determined to meet him. I was 17. I was like 2 months pregnant with my son probably. And I took 3 of my other girlfriends, Liz, Amy, and Rebecca. And we just pulled, it was an outdoor venue in Cincinnati called River Downs. And we never went with tickets, never went with anything. We just went on the strength that we would get in somehow. So all 4 of us girls were standing by the gate where the buses were parked behind.
And how are you dressed?
I remember wearing skinny jeans. Actually, they were popular then too. Skinny jeans and a tank top with a big thick belt, and I had big hair and all that good shit, and some high heel boots or something. And it was really hot outside. I remember it was like July or something, and I was having morning sickness because I was pregnant. So I had gone to the car to just cool off in the air conditioning for a minute, and when I came back, the girls were gone. There was another 2 girls, and they said they had gone back with Metallica. And I'm like, oh, great, whatever, you know. So I'm standing there like waiting to try to catch somebody's attention that could get them for me. And I see one of the tour buses, and like all the guys are standing in the front of the tour bus, like looking up towards us. I'm like, what the hell? So this guy comes off the bus, and he ended up being the bus driver. He came up to the gate, and he said to me, he was like, Ozzy wants to meet you. And I'm like, me? And he was like, yeah. He goes, he wants to meet you. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, I was happy. I'm thinking I'm all Jakey Lee. I'm thinking Jakey Lee's going to be on the bus, right? So we get on the bus. We walk down, and I get on the bus. And the one thing I remember is there was porn playing, and I'd never seen a porn movie before. And they were watching porn, and it was a bus full of guys. And it was Randy Castillo, Ozzy, some of the other crew members or whatever. And I forget the other guy's name that played with them, but Jakey Lee was not there. And I was really bummed out. And so they were watching the porn, and I'm just like sitting there awkward. And then the bus driver went in the back with Ozzy, and they called me back there. And he was like, Ozzy doesn't cheat on Sharon, he said, but he would love to see your tits. And I was like, really? And he goes, yeah, he's going to give you a front row seat and a pass, and da-da-da-da-da. He just wants to see your tits. He's not even going to touch them. And I'm like, okay. And so I did it. I flashed him my boobs, and that was it. He didn't touch me. He didn't say a word to me. He just went back to the front of the bus. And then the driver took me. He gave me my ticket and my pass, and then he took me to try to find my friends with Metallica, and we ran into Jakey Lee. And I was so excited, but he couldn't talk to me. He was with a girl or whatever. So they ended up walking me out to the front row, and my friends were out in the front row already, and Metallica was getting ready to come on. And they came out, Metallica came out, and you know how they bang their heads or whatever in those concerts? Well, they were the only 3 people, my friends, that were banging their head in the whole place. Nobody knew what to think of Metallica because it was the first kind of thrash metal experience, you know? So I was embarrassed that they were doing that, but whatever. And they were obviously interacting with my friends. You could tell them they were into my friends and everything, and I'm just like, whatever. And so they finished their set, and someone came out to get my friends, and I'm like, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to watch Ozzy. I want to see Jakey Lee, right? So I stayed for the Ozzy set, and I gave Jakey Lee a rose. He put it on the end of the guitar. Him and Ozzy were like hugging, kept singing to me the whole time. It was really, really fun. And then towards the end of the concert, they sent someone out to get me from Metallica, and I went backstage, and I went into Metallica's dressing room, and they were just maniacs. They were kids then, and they were throwing chili everywhere, and they were just acting like idiots, like, you know, and I was not impressed at all. And Kurt Hammett was really into my friend Rebecca. They ended up having a relationship after that concert, and I was talking to this guy, tour guy in there, and I was telling him how I wanted to meet Jakey Lee and da-da-da. He's like, here, I'm going to take you where he's going to come through this door at a certain time. And so I ended up getting to meet Jakey Lee. I took pictures of me kissing him, sitting in between his legs on the tour bus, like this whole picture montage that we did, but nothing personal, really. And I ended up driving James Hetfield and 2 groupies to a club in Cincinnati after the concert because the limo was full with the rest of the band and my friends. So James and his 2 girls rode with me to this. He was an asshole. And we went to this club, and so we were at the club, and I wasn't feeling well. So I was watching Lars play pool, and there was this blonde guy, the one that had told me about Jakey Lee, who was eating nachos, right? And he scooped up a big, like, chip of jalapenos, right? I'm like, what is this guy doing? He's gonna, like, burn. And I guess he'd never had them before or something, so he scoops this big chip in, and his whole face turns red, and he grabs his alcohol, and he's drinking that, and that sets it on fire, and then he's just, like, freaking out, and I'm just laughing my ass off. That ended up being Lars's lifelong best friend and drum tech, and we ended up engaged 3 months later, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Cliff died right after that in that terrible accident in Europe. And my boyfriend was also on the bus. He broke a leg, and it was just a change in the times in music at that time. So it was pretty exciting. I went to the Washington, D.C. to the Monsters ball or whatever with them right before Cliff died. It was a wild time. Metallica blew up after that.
Yeah, and you were 15.
No, I was 17.
You were 17.
I was 15 at
when you started.
Molly Crew.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The groupie thing went on for how many years for you?
Probably from about 15 till all through college, pretty much. So like 21, 22. Then by the time I moved out here and lived at that drummer's house, I had evolved, you know. I was kind of in the inner circle then, so, you know. I had a lot of really influential friends back then, so. But again, I never knew when to stop partying, so that kind of messed everything up.
But the groupie thing only happened when you were a teenager?
Just like my teenage years and in the early 90s.
But when you came to LA, you didn't really follow bands?
Well, I was roommates with that guy, and I mean, I spent every Friday at the Rainbow with him and Sam Kinison and Randy Castillo and like everyone, you know, every Friday. Like we were doing lines in the kitchen of the Rainbow, you know. It was a blast. But I was always the one, me and my roommate were always the ones that were staying up way past everybody else, you know what I mean? Like, that defines, I think, the difference in someone that's an addict and not, you know? The party never ends for us, so. I don't know how much of a party it is anymore, but.
And crystal meth is your addiction?
Yeah, I got
now?
on crystal when I was like 30 years old, so I was a little bit late with that. When you first get on crystal, if you've been on cocaine, you feel almost cured because you don't, you know, your habit can go from $300 a day to 10.
Yeah, I've heard this a lot.
Yeah, you don't need to use as much. But I've had more problems legally and whatnot on crystal than I have ever had with coke. So, you know, crystal's been horrible for me. Yeah.
And do you blame LA for any of your downfall, or is this just
No.
drugs?
LA's a wonderful place.
Yeah. Yeah, I see a lot of the comments on my channel where people say, "Oh, LA's a pit," and it's actually the same as any other city. It's just
It's the survival of the fittest. So I consider myself the fittest.
yeah.
Because I've survived here like 30 years.
I've been to every state and I've seen destruction, human self-destruction,
Yeah,
just as
for
much
sure.
in
Ohio
North
is much more cutthroat than here because people are hungrier.
Yeah, you
know?
name your state, Delaware, North Dakota, whatever. They have the same problems we do here. They look different because LA is.
There's just more opportunity to come up and make money, or you know, opportunity here than there is anywhere else. So, I don't know. It's I like LA,
Yeah.
and I don't blame it at all.
I wouldn't blame California for any.
Not at all.
What would you point a finger at in terms of why you're in the situation you are today? I mean, your childhood seemed pretty perfect, but there were drugs involved.
Poor choices, just
Poor
you know,
choices.
my own poor choices. My people pickers broke. Drugs.
Yeah.
Selfishness. You know.
And where do you see your life going now?
I'm not sure. I'm getting my stimulus tonight at midnight because for some reason disability people got theirs late. So I get it tonight and I want to go back to Ohio. So
It might be good.
I want to get a COVID test before I go to my parents. I've had several, but I want to make sure before I go around my parents. They're older. My dad's having hip surgery and he needs help. So that's the plan.
Yeah, it seems like a good plan.
Thanks.
There's too many ways to self-destruct here in LA.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Not that a 15-year-old girl can't get in trouble in Ohio. Apparently she can.
That's for sure, too.
And with this colorful life you've had, what's the most important lesson you've learned?
Not to have regrets and be as true to yourself as you can.
Sounds like you've done that.
Yeah, I have.
All right, Buffy. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Awesome.
I wish you the best of luck back in Ohio.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right.